All right. We are here in Shell Point, Florida. This is the Apalachee Inshore Fishing Report. I am Jay Carson. This is Evan Snow. Like I said, we are in Shell Point, beautiful Shell Point, Florida. This month is sponsored by North Florida Aquatic Adventures. North Florida Aquatic Adventures has a rental house here in Shell Point, plus offers guided inshore fishing from kayak trips, guided kayak tours, a variety of other outdoor activities that can be booked through North Florida Aquatic Adventures. And then we'll hit us up with a link on how to get in contact with Scotty here in Shell Point. And so that's where we are. Real quick, want to just touch on a couple things that Scotty's got going. Got a couple packages, right? Scotty with we got Scotty in the house. $900, 2-night stay, and an inshore guided fishing trip with me, and that's the upstairs unit. And then what was the downstairs one? $650 for the downstairs, and that's 2 nights, including a guided inshore fishing trip as well with yours truly. So great opportunity to come here to beautiful, quiet Shell Point, Florida, which is in North Florida. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful little spot down here. Beach is close by. Beautiful spot Scotty's got here with the bedrooms, and the upstairs is 2-bedroom, bath, kitchen, perfect. And then it's got a downstairs unit too, which is a little small. Just went in there, and it's got a little kitchenette, nice little shower. It's perfect. Yeah, if you're just coming to go fishing, then it's a sweet little spot to stay.
Yeah, and then Scotty will hook you up with kayak stuff. He'll do the eco tours on the spring-fed rivers here. He'll put you on some fish out here. Yep. You can slide the kayak in behind us or right across the street in the beach and roll right out there. So it's great. And Scotty's Scott Pritchard is very knowledgeable on kayak in our area, whether it be freshwater, spring-fed rivers, or fishing the coast out of the kayak. So he's even if you're not guiding, he'd be a great resource for
sure.
So.
Yeah, and just before we get started, we just recently had somebody that took advantage of the package trip, and so they went fishing with me one day, and then they went down the Wassissa River with Scotty the next. So that was pretty cool, pretty good time for them. All right, Evan. So it is October. We're running this a little late. What is it, October 6th?
Nah, that's all right.
October 6th. So, it's been raining the last 2 days. But before that, we had a little bit of a dry spell. It was trying to dry up a little bit. We're trying to get that water to clear up. I think the common trend, basically, in all of Apalachee Bay is we're still dealing with some really dark water, which is... there's some spots are producing better than others. So if you're trying to take into consideration where you're going to fish, it's best to talk to somebody. We'll talk a little bit about what we've been doing.
The bite's been pretty good overall. I think what's today? I lose track of my days, but I think
October
it was
6th.
last week. It'd been pretty good a couple weeks ago. Last week got a little boogered up with that little bitty mini kind of cold front came through. I think that was last week, and then that was 2 weeks ago, I guess, with the big full moon. It kind of threw them off a little bit. But the past couple weeks, they're really picking up steam out there. The trout and the redfish, and October is always a pretty cool month for me. The way I like to fish, because your speckled trout and your redfish really start overlapping.
They start to, yeah, especially towards the end of the month. It really,
we're catching them together right now. So I mean, but they will. It'll only get better as the month goes on. Yep. So I like when I can go fish an area, and I'll talk about this a little more in my best bets in a little while. Yeah. But you can catch trout, redfish, trout, redfish. Yeah. It's you don't really know what you're going to hook up with.
I also think too that in certain areas that the darker water has some of those fish pushed, especially the redfish, kind of pushed out a little bit, where they are kind of mixing in with the trout a little bit more. So I think that's just a byproduct of the conditions that we're dealing with here recently.
It is probably, and I've been catching them in the same spot for a few weeks now, dating back into September, which is probably a little early. I mean, generally, no matter what the water situation is in October, especially starting about mid-October. Usually it started early this year, maybe due to what you're talking about. But, this is a pretty common thing for this time of year.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, we had a pretty wet end of the summer last year, and we were dealing with not quite as dark water as we are now, but it was pretty dark last year too.
I can't remember that long ago.
Only reason I remember is because I was surprised as the weather cooled off of how many fish we were catching in close and in some dark water. But that hasn't been the case lately. So, like, for example, what I'm seeing is if you're fishing, especially in the upper parts of Apalachee Bay from the northern parts of Keaton Beach up to St. Mark's, in those areas where the water's real dark, where all those rivers are coming out, there's not a lot of fish up on the grass line. So if you're fishing, the oyster bars and creek mouths right up there on the grass line, you're catching a few, but you're having to struggle through it to get them. But if you get out there off, where the trout have been hanging, then you're picking up more fish.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah. So anyway, go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying, we're just let you guys know we're going to do a little more of a laid-back, interactive show tonight. I posted on the post yesterday that we were going to talk a little bit about etiquette. I'm kind of wanting to back up and punt on that because I don't know if I've had enough coffee or alcohol to talk about that right now and the nuance of it. And Jay, I may hold me to it. We'll see where we go.
Oh, I'm holding him to it.
We're going to talk a little bit about the red tide issues.
Yep.
Neither one of us are experts on that, but we're going to talk about that in a little while. But just as, once we get through our couple segments here, our best bets and our tackle tip, you guys just start throwing questions out there. We're just going to be real laid
Carlos,
back.
Carlos, I see your question. Carlos. So just make sure you hang around, and I'm going to get to that. We'll get to that question towards the end. So stick around, please.
Yep. So anyway, that'll roll us right into our best bet, sponsored by the Nowhere Grill.
Right. Well, go ahead.
Nowhere Grill is located on Beach Road, halfway between Perry and Keaton Beach. Live music Friday and Saturday night. Karaoke's on Thursday night. Awesome food, cool atmosphere. It's a great spot to stop after a day of fishing, or if you're standing down there to go grab a quick lunch, while you're taking a break or whatever. Mark and Tammy got it going on there. It's a really, really cool spot.
Also, big announcement from them. They're opening up a second restaurant.
Yeah, I don't know if he wanted us to announce that or not, but yeah, there you go.
I mean,
Jay, let it slip.
I'll let it slip. They're I don't know if they haven't opened yet, but they are currently hiring at the new location in Perry. So they're going to have a new spot in town called Somewhere, and they're currently hiring.
If you're
for that.
familiar with the Perry area, it's near Deals. It's the old Wheelhouse restaurant. It's just right towards Perry from Deals,
Yeah, so that's exciting. I mean, you're going to have two spots there. I love Nowhere, but, if you live in town in Perry, it's kind of a little bit of a ride. So having a spot in town is going to be really, really nice and beneficial for people, if you're staying in Perry.
My best bet.
Your best bet.
I'm going to talk about it. Can I talk about it?
Go ahead.
All right. So, I'm sorry. I'm throwing way off here.
What's your best bet?
Sorry, guys. Yeah. So I would say my best bet for the month of October is fishing some offshore structure. And when I say offshore, I mean...
You're talking about like 20 feet of water, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about offshore relative to being right next to the shore.
So not the grass line.
Not the grass line. Maybe like a few hundred yards out from the grass line is my offshore, especially this time of year. I'm not going out there far. But... whether that be oyster bars or some submerged rock, just what we're referring to as structure does not have to show at low tide. There's some flat limestone out there that never really gets exposed that'll be holding fish, and those trout and redfish, they're gonna bunch right up on that stuff. So you can target them with the same baits, and like I said, I was talking about earlier, you'll catch them both out there. So maybe instead of right on the grass line, maybe they're starting to move on some what we like to call structure, in inshore relative terms, not a reef and 20 foot of water. But yeah, just some hard bottom stuff like that. I think that's going to be my best bet for the month.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add too,
whatever you want to throw out,
is right now it's very hard to see that and very difficult to find because
if you know,
we got dark water, and you gotta. So one of the things that you can do is, when you have opportunities for clear water, maybe spend the day out, just kind of running around. You got some clear water, just kind of run around and mark some spots that you think might hold fish. Maybe not currently at that time that you're running over it, but during these transition periods that you can go back and fish later. When there might be some fish on it. So, and that's one of the ways that we find our spots is a lot of times we're running to and from a spot where we might not even fish it that day because we're doing something completely different, but we make a mental note or we might make a mark on a spot that, okay, this time of year, this spot ought to work pretty good. And so I want to make sure I can come back and hit that to find out, when that spot should produce.
And we don't want to talk about the cheat codes, right?
Right. No, we won't talk about the cheat codes.
Okay. Jason John, in Cherry Lake, man, I spent a bunch of days in Cherry Lake in my youth, tubing and swimming and hanging out, man.
So real quick before we transition to my best bets, are you? And I'm just going to kind of put you a little bit on the spot right now. Are you predominantly having success on artificials or another form of live cut bait?
Live bait's been better, but I would look for that to transition very soon.
Yeah.
Like you get like one more little cool front through, and it's gonna flip. But yeah, live bait's been out fishing the artificials right now. We've been fishing both, but I expect that to flip shortly. As soon as we get another front through here, it should switch, and you should be it should be on with the artificials shortly.
So you know me, Evan. I'm even if I got to grind it out, I'm going to go out there and throw some artificials. And so my best bet for the month is
Scotty.
Oh, hit that spot. Yeah. Perfect. Just that. Oh, you got it. Perfect. Sorry about that.
We went out of focus a little bit.
Hit
I
it
think.
again, Scotty. Perfect.
There we go.
All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so
it's not wasting that Ivy
my
Lake
best
degree.
bet for the month, if I'm fishing with artificials, we've got a lot of dark water. So I'm going to use a bait that's got a lot of vibration to it. So there's some baits out there that you can throw. A chatterbait is a bass bait. It was designed for bass fishing, but it is also a great redfish bait too. And it can be used in as shallow as 2 feet all the way out to 5 to 6 feet of water. And that's a great bait in some dark water. It puts out a lot of vibration, puts out some flash. And so that's something that you might want to think about adding to your tackle box. Another great bait in dark water is just a regular spinner bait like a Redfish Magic or a Cajun Thunder Spin. Any of those will be good. And then also something that you can throw in dark water, especially if there's not a lot of floating grass around, is what we call a wake bait, which is just a crankbait with a really shallow lip. And
or horseman court.
And it rides right under the surface. It puts out a bunch of vibration, looks really good, like a struggling bait that's swimming just below the surface, and redfish really love that too. So and trout will hit it as well. So, but with this dark water that we've got, and you're wanting to throw some artificials, I would definitely add some of those to my box if I'm gonna be fishing right now.
Yeah, and the floating grass is still an issue out there at the moment. It's not as bad as it was when we talked to you last month about it, but there are days we've had some north wind, some east wind and stuff that's helped with it, but we've also had some south wind, which we're going to talk about here in just a minute, and it's keeping it pushed in. It's still something to contend with, but as soon as we get another good cold front, it should get it on out.
Yeah, for sure. Basically, when we get that wind that shifts around out of the same direction, out of the east or northeast,
which we really need for
really
a couple different reasons, and we're going to talk about it soon. You want to roll the tackle tip?
Yeah, okay, so we're going to transition into this month's tackle tip, and we'll just let that roll right now. All right, guys, this month's tackle tip is brought to you by Keaton Beach Bums. We are right here in Keaton Beach at Keaton Beach Bums. So if you're ever in this area, make sure you stop in. They got your gas, bait, tackle, ice. It's your one-stop shop for everything you need. The boat ramp is literally right around the corner. So you can stop in here, grab your stuff, drop your boat in the water, and you're ready to go. So this month we want to talk a little bit about scents, artificial scents. Artificial scent is something that I use quite a bit in certain situations. I don't use it all the time, but I do like to use it in particular situations. One of those situations that I like to use artificial scents in is when I'm sight fishing. A lot of times I'll start out without using it, but if I feel those fish are real, maybe lethargic or not really wanting to bite or chew a lot, then I'll add a little scent just to trigger that bite. So I've just got rigged up a 1/8 ounce owner hook twist lock. This is a typical bait and what I use to sight fish. And then a lot of times these soft plastics will have a little slot in them or a little gap right here. There's a little slot in this one right here where the hook goes in. So what I like to do is I just take some of this scent and I slide it right in that slot, and I just fill it up right there. And it's kind of nice. It's out of the way, and you can see right there where I've stuck it in there and filled that up, and that's going to leave a nice scent for when you're sight casting at a fish. That fish is hesitant to eat the bait. That's going to put that scent in the water, and that's going to, coax that fish to bite that bait a little bit better. So that's one of the places that I like to use artificial scent. The other time is in the wintertime. Wintertime, a lot of the forage of these fish switches over to, shellfish and crustaceans and shrimp. And so when you're using artificials in those situations, because you're slowing that bait down, you're working that bait real slow, artificial scent is a great thing to do in that type of scenario, because again, you're trying to imitate the fish, the food, the forage that they're eating, those shrimp, those crabs, and so you want to find a scent that kind of matches that, and then use that a lot in the winter. When I use it in the winter time, every 10 to 15 casts, I'll reapply. And the stuff that I use, this is just Procure. You can use any. There's a lot of different artificial scents out there. If you're fishing in the wintertime and you're trying to match that shrimp, you want to get one that's kind of a shrimp scent. Whatever it is that you're trying to match with the hatch, try to find that particular scent to use in that situation. So I hope that helps. I hope that gives you kind of an indication of when are good times. Like I said, I don't use them all the time, but there are certain situations in which I really like to use them because I really feel like it increases the bite and also, it increases the number of fish that you can catch. So until next month. All right, so that was this month's tackle tip. We got word that might have been a little bit choppy, but just to kind of maybe overview of that is using scents and when they're productive. So if that's something that you're interested in and you have a question about anything that was talked about or discussed in the tackle tip, just throw it up there, and we want to talk about artificial scent, and we can talk a little bit more about that too in the questions at the end. So that's going to lead us into kind of an issue that has risen up here really just in the last few weeks. It's an issue that we don't often deal with here in North Florida. It's kind of an issue that Central and South Florida has to deal with, kind of on an annual basis. But we're fortunate here in North Florida to not have to deal with it too much, and that's the red tide. So we've got a little bit of a report. We've been kind of talking to some people around, and we've talked got a little bit of information about where we're seeing the most effects of the current. I wouldn't call it like a major event, but it's definitely affecting some areas of our region.
I'd call it pretty moderate, at least over towards the St. George, St. Vincent area.
Definitely over that way. It's definitely more significant than it is than here. So let's talk a little bit about where some of that red tide has been showing up, and then also, some of the effects that it's had here recently.
So just on social media and stuff, I saw where Swanee River a couple weeks ago had a report of some red tide, and then I didn't hear much else about it, and I was out fishing, I guess, a couple days ago between Keaton and Steinhatchee, and I was seeing, some dead fish. And I wasn't sure about that. I talked to some people. Some people said, well, they're just, there was a south wind. They were just floating up from Swanee. There shouldn't be anything here. And then I heard that over in Franklin County, especially right along the beaches of St. George and St. Vincent, they had a moderate fish kill over there, enough where I know I've heard a couple instances where people were just leaving their rentals for the week. Yeah,
I think it's not so much the dead fish, but I think it's the trouble breathing that people
both,
have.
Yeah.
I mean,
the smell and
the trouble respiratory
issues
for sure.
So, and then this graphic Jay's going to throw this up was brought to my attention here, and this is a density
of Crania brevis, which is the red tide organism.
Yeah, and obviously blue is lighter, red is more intense, and you can see right there along those barrier islands, St. George and St. Vincent, that just jumps off at you
Yes.
immediately is the intense spot there. And then down more towards the Swanee River, you can see it's much closer to land. But right at Apalachee Bay, it's out there.
It's offshore at Apalachee Bay, and hopefully, it stays out there, especially if we can get some wind in the opposite direction that we've been having the last few days. So, a north or an east wind, it should keep it out there. So hopefully Apalachee Bay is going to be
and if you look, it's kind of closest part in Apalachee Bay is kind of down there. That Steinhatchee is kind of close to the mouth of the Steinhatchee River down there, and I think that's where those fish were coming from. I'm not a marine biologist or anything, but I saw some fish floating in the water, and they didn't look like they had been dead that long. I mean, they were discolored, but I've left pinfish and bait in the live well before and had them look like that the next day. So I only think they're a day or two old. And with that south wind, we saw them, all the way inshore, but I think it was just blowing them in from
right.
offshore.
And so far, it has only been it's non-game fish species. So we're not.
I will say I haven't seen a game fish.
And
I'm not saying
the pictures that I've seen. I mean, I haven't seen any pictures of game fish. It's been a lot of bottom dwelling fish, fish that aren't
I saw a gar, I saw remoras, I saw some grunts or pigfish, and I saw a catfish when I was out there. But most of them were like grunts and pigfish,
smaller fish
is what I was smaller fish like that, and
and
I don't know, and if you get a lot of south wind, it could blow it more inshore, possibly. So we definitely want that wind to shift around out of the north and keep it out. And right now, it's not affecting our inshore waters of Apalachee Bay at the moment. But I mean, I don't know. I'm just telling you what little bit I do know about it and what I've seen.
Yeah, and if anybody has any experience that they'd like to share in the comment section, for other people to see besides us, feel free to throw that up there too. I will say that in my previous red tide experience, which I grew up fishing Southwest Florida, so I've seen it before. You don't usually get the game fish kills until it gets really, really bad. So I think as long as it stays like it is, it shouldn't affect the fish population currently. So
and we're not experts on this by any means, so don't take us as that. We just know a little bit about it, very broad strokes, scratching the surface, but we don't have any reason too much to believe that this is anything
out of the ordinary,
pollution induced or anything, because it's you have some nutrients induced outbreaks in South Florida, with some different things going on. But red tide occurs naturally, and just by what it looks like to me, I feel like this is just a natural occurrence.
Yeah,
a little
for
cooler,
sure.
little north wind accompanied with that some cooler weather would be good for that.
Definitely would get us. And I think we're kind of at the end of the season too. So the fact that it's just now showing up, I don't think that it's gonna have the opportunity to go crazy.
Hope not.
Yeah. So that being said, we just wanted to touch on that a little bit. And like I said, if you guys have any other experience. All I've seen from over there, St. George and Dog Island over there, is just the pictures from some of the dead fish on the beach. We talked to real quick. I know we're over here in Shell Point, and it's kind of transition a little bit, but you and I both talked to Chip Levine the last few days, and he shared a little bit of information from the Apalachee. What do you call that? Lanark area, I guess, right? Is that
I would call that the Eastern Panhandle.
Eastern Panhandle, or I guess that would be Eastern Apalachicola Bay, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, Chip said that they're still having plenty of decent days over there. Fishing's still been pretty good. Their water over there is really dark. They're still catching redfish, good numbers of redfish. He said trout bite's been a little off here lately. A lot of mostly, and he did say that they're catching them on artificials and live bait over there. Chip runs a lot of live bait, but he does run artificials too. So he's being successful, with both trout and redfish here recently on in that area with artificials and live bait. So that's something to take in if you're looking to go over that way. If you're looking for a guided trip, I would definitely book Chip Levine, FC Charters. Check him out. But that was just a little bit of information he wanted to make sure that we passed along.
Yeah, Jerry Murphy said, will the red tide affect the bite of game fish? I don't have a lot of experience with red tide, but I would believe that, yes, it would if it was in an affected area.
If it's in a currently affected area, yes. and that line can be pretty significant. Like you can have a distinct line where, okay, east of this line right here, it's affecting the fish, but west of it, it seems to be okay. And so just to keep that in mind, that's...
So it's not currently, from the samples that were drawn, it's not apparently currently in Apalachee Bay, just kind of around and offshore. So it shouldn't have very little effect on the fishing inside of Apalachee Bay.
And all of that, when we put that graphic up, and I'll put it up one more time, but all of those clear areas there where there is no red tide, you're going to find normal fishing. It's going to be perfectly normal, as it would be, under the current conditions.
Other than if you experience what I experienced, just seeing some fish floating from offshore.
Yeah, and those fish might not necessarily been affected by that area, so they could have flowed in from anywhere. All right, so that also kind of wraps us up over there as far as a little report from the little bit more western areas of our region, and so we're going to transition into the question and answer portion.
Talk about the fly shop.
Yes, I'm about to talk about. So one thing I want to talk about is in Tallahassee is Wilkinson Fly Fishing. Wilkinson Fly Fishing is a little fly shop here in the north side of Tallahassee near Havana. Wilkinson Fly Shop. They have an online store and a in-store shop, and Bob Wilkinson owns it. He's a great guy. One of the things that we're doing here recently is we've started a fly tie night. So if you're interested in learning how to tie flies, interested in getting into fly fishing, interested in any of just you're not sure where to start, we do these fly tie nights. They're the second Thursday of every month. We got one coming up October 14th of this month. Bob will be there. So if you want to meet Bob, feel free to come up. If you don't even want to tie flies and you just want to come say hello, feel free to stop by. We start October 14th at 6 p.m. We're going to eat some dinner. Fly tying starts at 7, but like I said, you are more than welcome to come hang out and just say hello. I'll be there. A couple other local guides will be there, and so it'll be a good time. We usually have a good time doing that. But if you're interested in any type of fly fishing gear or equipment or fly tying materials, Wilkinson Fly Shop is definitely the place to go.
There's not many in the area.
There's not. Other than Bass Pro Shop, which their selection is really, really limited. But Bob has just about everything that you could think of to gear up or to resupply your fly gear. And so that's wilkinsonflyfishing.com. His number is 850-539-1387. The address for the fly shop is 362 Champion Oak Circle, Havana. The fly shop's in his house, so it looks, when you pull up to that address, you're going to see a house, but he says don't hesitate to drive up. As long as you're there, he's there, you can come in and get whatever you want, get whatever you need. Just, you might want to give him a call before you go there, just make sure he's there. But he's got a great fly shop in his house. I mean, half of his house is a fly shop. It's really cool. So if you haven't ever, if you're interested in doing that or you need some fly gear, that is definitely the place to go. All right.
Go ahead and start throwing some questions in, guys.
Yeah.
We're getting to that point. I'm pretty much opening up. We'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about.
All right. So what's next, Evan? What are we missing? We need to talk a little bit about where we're at today. Just real quickly, want to mention
while we're waiting on a question or two to get in. If you're going to make me talk about etiquette, we can talk about that. But we're sitting here, and the sun's went down. You guys watch the sun go down behind us.
You can still see the beautiful canal behind us, though, and the boats in the background. So
we're sitting right on the back porch here at North Florida Aquatic Adventures in Shell Point. So great view.
Real quick touch on those two opportunities that you got. $900, stay upstairs. It's 2 bedrooms, full kitchen, full bathroom, beautiful view out the front, beautiful front porch. The view is looking right out over the water. Great spot, and if you got a couple people that you want to come hang, it's $900 for 2 nights plus an inshore guided fishing trip with plug and fly charters. So great opportunity there. If you want to save a little bit of money, you can stay downstairs. It's a 1-bedroom. What did you call it earlier? Economy or efficiency? Thank you. Efficiency unit. Got a full queen size or full king size bed, full bathroom, kitchen, living room. and that's $650 for 2 nights plus a inshore guided trip. If they want to stay just here, what's the rate for the upstairs room? $250 for upstairs, and then downstairs is $150. All right, so there you go, $150 a night.
It's a really nice place and a great jumping off point to fish and kayak.
And you got a canal with boat dock right behind you. So if you're towing your boat, you can pull your boat up right in behind the house, and you can go right out here at Shell Point, and there's great fishing right off the point here. All right, so you want to touch on some questions first? We can talk a little etiquette in and around it.
Yeah. The etiquette thing is not is so nuanced and it varies so much from day to day, from whatever day of week it is to me, to what time of year it is.
Depends on the style of fishing.
It's the style of fishing you're doing, the style of fishing people around you are doing. Right. So it's like I said, I don't know if I've had enough coffee to really get in this, but I think we're about to. So
I think the biggest thing where etiquette becomes more of an issue is when you're dealing with shallower water, if that makes sense. So in other words, what I'm saying is, if we got a big high tide and you're drifting in 4 or 5 feet of water, and there's plenty of water for those fish to be in, then it becomes less of an issue. Whereas if you're drifting or poling or doing something in 1.5 feet of water, that scatters those fish out a lot more. And so even though a boat is in a particular
you're fishing
spot,
a wider area.
You're fishing a wider area because those fish are a lot more scattered out. So if you're running or you're trying to get into an area that is relatively shallow, and when I say relatively shallow, I'm talking like 2 feet or less,
Shallow.
If you see a boat in there that is, whether they're poling, whether they got the trolling motor down, whether they're trying to fish that shallow water, you need to make sure you give them an extra wide berth. On especially when the
don't run
shallow.
Or idle 2 or 3 cast lengths away from them.
Sure, and I would even say you need to go farther away than that.
You need to go way further away. But
the other thing I would say too is sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I was going to say real quick, don't run inside of them. Make sure that you run outside of where that person is.
And we get it. There's only so much fishable area. I understand it in our area. So the day of the week and the boat traffic on the water matter. I mean, if you don't have that much room between boats, I mean, you have just as much right to fish there as anyone else. I mean, if it's busy, it's busy. But if there's nobody within sight, leave somebody alone.
Yeah.
I mean, it comes on Saturdays. You're just gonna have to deal with it. I'm not saying it's right. You're gonna have to deal with a certain amount of space issues on Saturdays, and also, the whole running through people's drifts and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a little bit of an issue trout fishing, but if you're gonna, and I'm not gonna name any areas, but if you're fishing a popular area that is a high traffic area, and people fish there, you can't get real bent out of shape when there's people around you. If you're fishing, if you're consciously fishing with 10 boats within a half-mile radius of you, and you're in this group of boats, trout fishing, red fishing, whatever you're doing, drifting for trout, you can't get mad at someone running through your drift because you're consciously choosing to fish among boats.
Yep.
I mean, what can you do? You're just, I mean, that's you're making that choice.
Yep.
So there's not, people have to get in, people have to get out, and go fish somewhere else if you can't deal with people.
Whereas conversely, if you see somebody in there real shallow and there's not a whole other boats around, then you need to give that boat a wide berth. Give them some space, because they might not actively be fishing a fish that's right there by the boat, but they're looking for fish that are more scattered out across that flat. And when you run across that shallow flat, it pushes all those fish out into deeper water.
Yeah, and different times of the year it's different. And ideally, if you got up before daylight and you ran to one of these popular high traffic areas that whether you're at Panacea or St. Mark's or Steenhatchee, there's these areas where the common weekend warrior, the average person, knows they've been catching fish for 10 years there. It's a common area. Ideally, you don't want someone coming in there to fish, but if you're fishing that area on a Saturday and it's good weather,
you can't be mad
you
somebody
can't.
comes
I
in
mean,
there
they're
with you.
coming.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it right. but you just got to use some common sense.
Well, and also too, right now, particularly, we are in a time of year when there's fish are super scattered.
Yeah.
So you
can fish anywhere.
You can fish really anywhere, and so if you're in like deeper water, whereas you're in your 5-6 feet of water, somebody runs by you, that's not that big of a deal.
And not saying it's okay, guys. If you're out there and there's a boat or two out on the flats, be aware of wind direction. Run behind them. Give them some room if you can. Now, if I'm running the coastline and there's 30 boats stretched out, no, I'm not running 2 miles offshore to go around anybody. I'm going through them. But there again, I mean, if you're going to fish around a bunch of people, you're going to get run through.
Yep.
I mean, that's just part of it. But, and I think it changes some in the winter.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, there's definite different etiquettes in the winter because the fish are so much more stacked up in specialized locations where you're gonna run into other people just trying to get.
And you can be successful fishing close to people in the winter, especially when you're in the wintertime in these creeks and rivers. I mean, you're just going to be fishing around people. There's no getting around it unless you run way off to a secluded area, and that's what I like to do. That's my prerogative. But if you're going to go try to fish, and I am naming a spot, the Osceola River during the wintertime when the fish are in there, you're going to have boats all around you. It's just going to happen.
Yep.
So it's like that on the flats. I'm just saying, don't get mad if you're fishing a common area and you're choosing to be there.
But I will say this: if I'm in 2 feet of water or less, and you run by me, there's a good chance I'm gonna throw my hands up at you. You're like, what are you?
Don't
what
do
are you
that.
doing?
Oh man.
So
that's big consequences there.
So just saying, if you get the hands, then you know that you're running a little too close to where I'm fishing. Yeah,
someone's in there by themselves, and there's plenty of room. Give them some room, man. Go explore somewhere.
And again, that has more to do with water depth than it does, where it is that you're fishing.
There's a big tournament in Steenhatchee this weekend, and it gets a little under our skin. And there's rules about burning flats and stuff like that, and they're rules for a reason. And we're out there every day. I mean, we see who does what, and all I'm saying is you get reported.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's get to some of these questions. And then, like I said, if you have a question about that or you want to probe Evan a little bit farther,
I'm done.
Feel free to throw that up there in the chat. So let's start with the top. We don't have a lot of questions here, guys. So if you want us to talk about some of this, we're going to touch on all of these right now. First question is, where are the reds at? And that's from Carlos Ochoa. And Carlos, I believe that's going to depend a lot as to where exactly that you're fishing. And I see another question about...
they're out at the bird rack on cut bait. That's in John Minnick's spot.
If you're fishing out of Keaton, they're a little easier to find.
Don't tell.
Well, I'm just saying that I mean, to some extent, the darker water still is making it difficult everywhere. But if you're fishing the coastline right through there, I mean, there are going to be some areas. I mean, just being real, that are going to be a little bit better than others. If
you're near a river outflow, the water's really dark and it can be tough fishing.
But that's not to say, I know that the St. Mark's area has been producing some quality reds as well too. So it's not just, it's definitely kind of area specific right now, and I think that has more to do with the amount of fresh water that is out there. All right, next question, Jerry Murphy. Will the red tide affect the bite of the game fish?
We've already talked about that.
Yeah, we did, and we said that
we
said that we don't feel like it's going to affect it too much if we're in an area that's not like a huge fish kill going on. Kenny Mullins, Kenny, hope you're feeling all right, man. Kenny came down sick here lately. He says I'm waiting to hear on Evan on the etiquette, so we talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was waiting on some people to
chime in on that. Yeah,
we got nothing, so I guess I'm done with it.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I thought maybe you have something to say there, Kenny, on that one here lately. Tyler Smith, go ahead. What do you say?
No, you're on the question.
Okay, Tyler Smith says, what's the deal with the redfish bite lately? Haven't been seeing any numbers lately, primarily Oscilla to Spring Warrior. they're out there. They're hard to find. They're in deeper water. They're in that offshore structure, like you were talking about. So you're just gonna have to the creeks and the creek mouse and the oyster bars that are up close have not been producing as of lately.
I will say it's been tough on artificial.
Yeah.
I mean, you can catch some, but they're biting bait way over artificial. They're there. I mean, I can take customers out and we're fishing with bait, and I can be throwing a top water plug or a paddle tail or something, and they're those four horsemen are going down, every 2 or 3 casts, and I'm not getting a bite. Fishing the same water right next to them. It's been tough, but I expect that to flip. That should start changing like really soon.
Yep. Excuse me.
Easy there.
Yeah, sorry. Last year, I remember running a few trips at the end of October, and this is why I remember the water was darker, because I was fishing some water that was darker than I thought it should be. And we were catching fish, but we weren't catching the numbers that I thought we should be catching in the style that we were fishing for that particular time of year. And this was toward the end of October. However, there was a little flip that switched from the end of October to about the first or second week of November last year, where all that just fired off. Just keep that in mind. There is going to be a switch that flips here shortly, and you're going to start finding a lot more redfish in your traditional redfish spots, and that's going to be for the entire coastline. So that's what we'll say about redfish. Anything else? You got anything else to add on that one?
I got distracted. No, I think you got it.
Okay. Tim Wright says reds are between Osceola and Icky.
There sure are. There's a lot of them there.
There are. Like I said, they're just not up on the grass line. You're going to have to fish out offshore a little bit. Matthew Parrish, appreciate you putting up with us this past Saturday, especially Lawrence. Evan.
Hey, it was a pleasure, Matthew. I enjoyed fishing with your son. He seemed to have a good time. He caught all the fish. That was for sure, man. Thanks.
Chris Harwood. Chris Harwood is the
tournament
director
for the North Florida Redfish Series, which is out of Steinhatchee this weekend.
Yep.
If you want to go fish it.
Chris says, I appreciate you guys being our eyes and ears on the water before our tournaments. We do not condone burning or poor etiquette by any participants. And I will say that Chris does a really good job. If you send him in information that you might have about somebody not following the rules, he will follow up on it. So he's good on his word on that one.
Yeah, for sure. And we get it. Part of it when they have the tournaments where we fish a lot, it's higher traffic, but that's just part of it. And I don't mind that. It's when people are just hurting and just really gritting off flats and just trying to just run them up. That's what gets under my skin a bit. And I haven't seen a lot of that lately. Yeah. So that's good.
I will say, from when Evan and I were talking about this,
IFAs were awful.
The IFAs are the worst. But
awful.
I will say that Evan and I were talking about this on the way over here, is that we have seen that this year it's been better than previous years. So, and I think that
I think Chris has a lot to do with that.
Exactly.
Because they set rules in place,
right.
And he enforces them. So, yep. I think that's you got consequences to it. It'll create some behavior
for sure. All right. Michael Ammon says, "Hey guys, Michael, you got any? I know you got some fishing insight. Feel free to throw that up in there so that we can talk about the what Michael's been. I know Michael's been on the water a little bit here lately.
Yeah, he's out there.
I know he likes to throw his reports up. Steve Simpson. I'm sorry. Let me get your name right, Steve. If you had to land-based fish from anywhere, where would you go?
Hickory Mound. I mean, right now, land-based fishing is going to be tough right now.
Yeah, I would say.
But I think rule of thumb for my area is, or our area, the Apalachee Bay or Hickory Mound is really hard to beat for land-based. You got something to add? What would you say?
St. Mark's. St. Mark's coming up as it gets. Yeah, Stony back there in the back of Stony Bayou.
Yeah, walking into the refuge and stuff.
Yeah, it's hard to get
some
of
hike,
that, but
hey, I had a guy on the boat years ago that told me, and I'm sure maybe some of you guys watching this or know people do this. They'd go to the lighthouse, wait out there on the jetties, and just take their bait bucket and their rod and reel, and just swim out to the oyster bars and just walk around the oyster bars out from the lighthouse at St. Mark's.
So swim across the channel.
Yeah, swim across the channel to the
boat channel.
There's just
those
bars
always
out there on low
that
tide.
chain of bars on the right
you
side.
Catch some fish doing that. It takes a little work and a little adventure to do, but there's some big stuff swimming in that channel.
Yeah, no kidding.
And at the fork of the Wakulla and St. Mark's, right there by the fort.
All right. Todd Tanner says, we caught most ours on artificial under popping corks last week. Couldn't do much with pinfish. Just never know. Got to try it all. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I think if you are throwing the artificial, the popping cork helps.
Yep.
For them to locate the bait.
Yep.
In this dark water. And honestly, I'll be honest with you, if we're throwing a popping cork, we've had bait under it. Most of the artificial we've thrown has been like top water plugs and paddle tails and stuff like that. So, no cork involved there.
Yep. And there's several reports of the common
I think that's
denominator.
What Eamon does
is
throw an artificial
under
corks.
But it's
right
under
now.
cork. The common denominator here has been it's been under a cork. So if you are going to throw artificials and you want to be successful at that, it probably needs to be under a cork.
Let's see, out minimum of 4 feet to 7 feet. Michael, I don't think I've seen 7 feet in 2 or 3 weeks. But yeah.
All right.
Where is Hickory Mound? It is
John Ray asks, where is Hickory Mound?
East of the Ikefina State Park. You can access it to the road going down to Ikefina, or you can access it straight off of Highway 98. It's in, I guess you would call that northern western Taylor County.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
It's a WMA. You can you look it up.
It's a great spot. I love Hickory Mound. You can crab there. You can go down there and cook out. Go bird watching.
It's a nice kind of remote outpost, and if you want to go spend the day fishing, mess around, kind of being out in nature, it's a great. So our coastline is just so soft. We have so much marshland, and it's hard to people who move here. There's not much access like when you go to South Florida and fish canals and other parts where you have more of a hard coastline. So there's a mile of soft marsh. So it's they got dikes and creeks back there, and it's just a good land-based fishing area. And two kayak
there are
launches.
2 kayak ramps. The when I used to
can
kayak
even go
fish,
put a small john boat in there too.
Yeah, we used to. I've put john boats in there before too. Yeah, and it's good duck hunting in the wintertime. So anyway, that's Hickory Mound. It hadn't been the last few years for whatever reason, but several years ago I've never actually duck hunted it, but I heard that it used to be phenomenal.
No idea, Bob. About he says, "Do you think the red tide will affect the bay side or just the beach side?" Right now, I don't really know
the beach side.
The model that I saw, it wasn't in the bay; it was on the Gulf.
Well,
side.
and Chip's fishing the bay right now, so.
Yeah, it should be okay.
Chip Levine has been fishing the bay, and he's been catching plenty of fish in there. So, I would say as of right now, I don't think that it's affecting the bay side.
Yeah. Anything else? Anybody got anything else they want us to talk about? I didn't get too fired up. Nobody got me too riled up.
I'm
there.
surprised we didn't get.
What's that?
That might get you fired up. Talk about etiquette between kayaks and boats.
Oh yeah, these damn kayak guys, man.
So Scotty says, what is the etiquette between kayaks and boats?
I mean, ideally, you should treat a kayak just like it's a regular boat, but nobody does, and kayakers are quick to let you know that nobody does. I try to give them room. Don't paddle down the middle of a boat channel, but
for sure.
I try to respect if they're in there fishing a creek mouth or a flat. I try to give them plenty of room.
Yeah, I think again, it's one of those things that depends on the situation. If I'm just trying to get by them, I'm not gonna run by a kayaker on plane for the most part.
Not wash them.
Yeah, I'm not gonna wash them. Yeah. And if they're in an area,
if it's Scott, I might.
If they're fishing an area, again, I'm not gonna run through that area on plane. I'm gonna, try do my best to give them some space. I'll, come down off a plane, idle around where I want to go, and give them the berth that they can get. I also believe though that they can't cover as much water as I can, so I try to think about how much water they can cover in a certain amount of time, and give them that amount of space that would be necessary for that.
I will say, a kayak guy just paddle right through where you're fishing too. I've seen it happen. I granted because they can't go out around. You know,
I will say though that kayaks do very, very little to disrupt your fishing in any kind of way. So if a kayaker paddles through where I'm fishing, I'm not going to get too upset about it.
Yeah, Tim. One thing I've learned hanging out with Pat McGriff is he is an absolute mathematician. You know the meme. You know the meme with the guy from The Hangover, the Galifianakis, when he's like just staring and like, oh, there's all the equations in there. I feel like that's Pat McGriff on a fishing trip.
No, that's Pat McGriff when he's trout fishing with a popping cork. Pat, we love you if you're listening to this.
Yeah.
Pat, we love you if you are listening to this.
It's great.
I give Pat a hard time. I try to give Pat a hard time, but every time I try to give Pat a hard time, I wind up getting it one back. It comes back on
tenfold.
It comes back on me. So I'm learning my lessons on that one. Yeah, I'm missing my math lesson tonight. It's usually I get them. You know why I get the math lesson, Michael, is because I'm the one who always try to instigate the stuff, and which I should know by now, not to do that.
Hey, and Pat makes us. He's good at making us look stupid on these things because you know he'll go off on one of his spiels, you know, and most of these I've heard before, so I tune out a lot of times. I'm looking at comments on my phone or just whatever, and he just he points to me, hey, what's that do? And I'm like, dude, I haven't heard the last 30 seconds of what you're talking about.
Last 2 minutes of what you've been saying.
I don't have a clue. He's just like gets frustrated with you.
So, if you like that, we'll have Pat on again here in the next few months.
Oh, yeah. Pat likes doing them.
So anyway, all right. Well, I think that's going to about wrap us up from now dark Shell Point, Florida, beautiful Shell Point, Florida. So we want to thank again Scotty for sponsoring the October edition of the Apalachee Inshore Report. We really appreciate their support.
He's a good friend to the show
for what we're doing here, and so we just really appreciate that, Scotty. So we just want you to know that. Evan, you got any last minute things you want to add? We're next month is November. Are we at Nowhere next month?
I think we're at Nowhere.
Yeah.
I think.
And we're at Nowhere next month, and then we're at Nowhere in November.
Yeah. So we're going to go Nowhere, and that's open to the public, and we're going to do it during business hours. So, some guys want to come hang out. We'll have a couple.
We need to do a better job of
beverages,
trying to promote that in
afterwards.
Advance.
Maybe talk some fishing.
Yep. So we'll try to remember to kind of promote that a few days before, give you a heads up, just to send out a reminder that we'll be there and what time we'll be there, and if you want to swing by, it'd be cool to have a live audience. So,
casing real quick, they should be busting up in November.
Yes. About November is when they start to split up. So that being said, and then also real quick, in December we are going to do our first ever. Evan, I've converted Evan. He is now a fly fishing extraordinaire. So we are going to be doing our first ever, not entirely fly fishing show, but a show in which we incorporate some fly fishing aspects in December, and we will be, I believe, at Wilkinson's Fly Shop there in Tallahassee for that one too. So just to be a heads up on that one. All right, so that's going to wrap us up. I am Jay Carson. This is Evan Snow. Thanks again, Scotty from North Florida Aquatic Adventures, and we will see you guys next month.